Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to stop my share screen so we can see everyone. So hi, I'm Lisa Kramer. I'm RISD's Fulbright Program Advisor. And with me, we have Gabriel Bailaski, who received his RISD BFA in FAV in 2017 and a Fulbright to Poland. And Irina Wang, who received her RISD MID in Industrial Design in 2020 and a Fulbright to Finland. So hi, Irina and Gabriel, thank you so much for joining us to talk about your Fulbright experiences. We're really excited to have you with us. We also have with us Kevin Jankowski, our RISD Careers Director, who is a fantastic RISD Fulbright reviewer and interviewer. He also supports me to best support all of you. So I'm first going to play a video tutorial on all things Fulbright. I recorded this in advance to streamline all the information so you have all this in one place. This video is from 2023 because Fulbright 2024 doesn't actually start until April. I will update this tutorial in April, but know that while there might be some minor changes, the heart of Fulbright that you're going to hear in this presentation will not. After the video, we will hear from Gabriel and Irina, and then we'll have the Q&A.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to All Things Fulbright U.S. Student Program for RISD Artists and Designers. The Fulbright U.S. Student Program provides 6 to 12-month fully funded grants abroad for graduating students and recent graduates to conduct individually designed research projects, enroll in graduate school, or teach English. I'm Lisa Kramer. I'm RISD's Fulbright Program Advisor, or FPA. Fulbright is an intense process. My job is to make it more exciting rather than overwhelming, and to help you understand the process and mission so you learn and grow from each step. I'm here to help you at all stages of the application cycle, to pull all the pieces together into a compelling proposal, no matter your discipline or project content. Fulbright is also a long process. To briefly outline the timeline, you will start working on this in the winter or spring, maybe even earlier. Things will intensify during the summer as you pull all the pieces together. You will submit early fall. Then the following spring, you are notified of the decision. Grants begin late summer or fall, a year after you submitted, or even the winter of the next year for some countries. Once you start the application process, the grant is a good year away. So if you're intending to apply this year, great. Consider that you will need to set some time aside for Fulbright between spring through September. If you're interested in next year or the year after, also great. It is never too early to start thinking about Fulbright. Some can pull this off in 5 to 6 months, but many take 1 to 2 years to develop their proposal. In any case, you are here now, and you will learn a great deal no matter how far you go in the Fulbright exploration. So about Fulbright. The mission is to foster mutual understanding between nations, advance knowledge across communities, and improve lives around the world. It was created by Congress in 1946 to promote international goodwill through the exchange of students in the fields of education, culture, and science. It is sponsored by the U.S. Department of State's Bureau for Education and Cultural Affairs. It is administered in the U.S. by the Institute of International Education, IIE, and it is administered overseas by binational commissions and U.S. embassies. This is a government grant, which you should keep in mind if you consider your audience. It is also very important that you always keep in mind that Fulbright is at heart about meaningful cross-cultural exchange. This grant is open to graduating seniors and fifth-year students. You may begin the application process in your junior year or fourth year, but won't be able to submit an application until the fall of your senior year or fifth year. It is open to graduate students and to recent graduates. Know that you can apply through RISD up to 3 years after graduation. You must be a U.S. citizen by the application deadline, have a bachelor's degree by the start of the grant, be proficient in the language of the host country, and have limited experience in the host country. For most programs, applicants who've had extensive recent experience in the host country or extensive foreign experience may be at a competitive disadvantage, but you are still eligible to apply. Plus, there are unique country-specific requirements. Know that diversity and inclusion are cornerstone principles of Fulbright. Fulbright's goal is to have a program that represents the diversity that makes up the U.S. There are 2 main grants. The Study Research Grant, which is independent research, study, or arts projects abroad for 6 to 12 months, offered in 140 countries. English teaching assistantships are an opportunity for you to help teach English and U.S. culture in a classroom for 8 to 10 months, offered in 75 countries. I'm going to focus on the Study Research Grant, as that is what most RISD students are interested in. But know that we are happy to help you with an ET application too. Keep in mind, though, that the ETA opportunity comes with the expectation that you have experience in teaching, experience working with non-native English speakers, specific teaching ideas and methods, and can make clear connections as to why teaching English will support your long-term goals. If you are applying for a study research grant in the creative arts, you will need a well-developed project and/or study plan that improves your craft, which means art and design making needs to be central in the study, research, and outcome. You will need to make your case for participating, learning, and growing as an artist. You need to develop and document a host country affiliation relationship. This might be with a university, research think tank, lab, library, community organization, or nonprofit, in which you receive mentorship and critique, maybe access to facilities or equipment. Perhaps you're taking a class or a workshop. Plus, you could be supporting their class or research, or assisting in a production or conference. You will need a compelling visual portfolio that supports your proposed grant activities. Consider that the portfolio will be reviewed by U.S. artists and designers and host country experts who are likely not all artists and designers. You need to include meaningful host country community engagement and have a high level of academic, professional, and/or artistic achievement, and demonstrated leadership, flexibility, adaptability, and openness. What are the award benefits? Round-trip airfare, a monthly stipend, accident and sickness benefit, and other possible benefits depending on the host country. Once you return from a Fulbright experience, you'll have gained new skills, perspectives, and insights that will influence you for the rest of your life, along with Fulbright being a great opportunity to build your network overseas. One of the most common questions about benefits is, can I defer my loans while I'm on a Fulbright grant for a year? And the answer is yeah. What does a Fulbright project look like? It is so hard to define. There are many variables, from your skills and interests to your affiliate's area of expertise. And there are 140 countries, each with their own interests and requirements. The possibilities are endless, but there are basically 3 broad types with lots of gray area in between. Independent study research is the traditional Fulbright award in which you design a project from beginning to end that allows you to work with people of the host country to mutually advance in your field of interest. Some countries offer graduate enrollment as an option. In this case, the program, activities, and outcomes are set. It's graduate study. However, this can be tricky as you have to make a strong case for this isn't just about funding for graduate study. Why is this a Fulbright? What is the meaningful cross-cultural exchange? Why this country? How is this something you can't do in the U.S.? It is important that you make your case for how your exploration goes beyond the institution of graduate study. And for most countries, you also have to be accepted to the university program, usually a separate process. This is what most RISD Fulbrighters do, hybrids. Most have some connection to a university, academy, or institution in which there is some structured class or workshop learning, perhaps as a guest student, plus some sort of independent mission, a burning question, something guiding your exploration. Usually to do this effectively, RISD applicants have secondary affiliates which get them out into the community exploring, practicing, and applying their skills and learning. Let's move on to Fulbright resources. The Fulbright website is extensive. Everything you need is there, but because there's so much to navigate, I'm going to give you a tour and highlight the most important pages for you to review. First, be sure you're on the Fulbright U.S. Student Program website, not the Fulbright Scholars website or a host country's Fulbright website. Make sure it says U.S. Student at the top. Probably the most exciting pages are the country information and requirements found here by region. For example, let's look at the Philippines. Here you will find the award profile and grant length, anything in particular they are looking for in candidates, such as discipline, area of focus, or degree level. Of course, you'll want to check out the language requirement right away. Any restrictions or preferences on affiliation will be listed on this page, and you may find a link to the host country website with additional country-specific resources. You may be able to find an email to an actual human you can reach out to. Process information is found under the Applicant tab, Application Component. Choose the grant, Creative and Performing Arts. Here you will find each application component, with drop-downs that include considerable details on instructions and tips. Visual material requirements are found under Supplemental Materials. The visual materials are not supplementary, they are required and very important. Click on the link to the required materials. You get to a list of Fulbright disciplines with drop-downs to the requirements for each. You will have to choose a discipline. There is no multi-discipline option. It's not that you can't have a multidisciplinary project or practice, but because there are so many applicants, they do have to put you in categories. So you will have to choose what best fits your project and consider your audience. The link to the online application, which opens in early April, is found here. Fulbright offers websites April through October under the Applicants tab under Information Sessions. These are one-hour sessions in which you will hear from Fulbright experts and hear questions from your peers around the country. They even have webinar office hours by region where you can ask specific questions about your country. It is important that you listen to at least a couple of these. I listen to 8 to 10 every year, and I learn a little something new each time. It is also important that you hear from Fulbright directly to confirm what I'm telling you and to provide you with new perspectives. If you see one you are really interested in but miss it, make note. Then go to recorded webinars to listen in. You will also find webinars from the previous year here. I am often an applicant's first go-to, but know that Fulbright program officers who work for IIE are there to help too. Sometimes I don't know the country-specific answer. There are 140 countries, so it will be best that you email or call the program officer directly. Their contact information can be found by going to Contacts in tiny white font at the bottom of the page. Also, in tiny white font at the bottom, you will find a link to a page of interesting statistics. You will find applicants and awards for each country. I did the math here, and in 2022-2023, 35.3% of study research projects were awarded for the Czech Republic and 12.8% for New Zealand. By no means should statistics solely guide your choice. If you are passionate about a country and your project is a great fit for that country, don't look at the statistics. But if you are open, the statistics may help you make a decision. You may want to poke around in the statistics and consider a less competitive country. Obviously, English-speaking countries are more competitive. The UK is by far the most competitive. If you speak another language, consider how that might be an advantage. If you don't speak another language, consider a country like Latvia or Norway with no language requirement, or Laos or Malaysia that have a more flexible language requirement. Learning some of the language is still important to these countries, but because their language is not commonly taught in the US, they are more flexible. Also, in statistics, you will find a link to the top producing institutions. RISD students and alumni do very well in this competition, and RISD is a Fulbright top producing institution with 109 awardees who have explored their creative projects in 42 different countries. Under the Alumni tab, you will find a grantee directory with Fulbright alumni across the country in all disciplines. I did a search on sculpture in India, which resulted in 13 Fulbrighters. There is not a lot of information on each Fulbrighter here, but the directory may help give you some project idea leads or help you determine the country's interests, and maybe even lead you to someone to contact. Fulbrighters are often happy to talk to applicants about their experience. But when looking for Fulbright artists for inspiration or support, I suggest you start at the RISD Careers website. Scroll down to learn more about Fulbright and then to the RISD Fulbright Showcase. You will get to a site of RISD Fulbrighters. 46 RISD Fulbrighters are on this site. In stories, you can read about their projects and you can connect with them through their website or see what they're up to on their Instagram. In the Experience Gallery, you can see some great photos of their lives and the people they worked with while on the Fulbright grant. And in the Artwork Gallery, you can see both what they submitted to receive the grant and the results of their project. This website is a great place to go for inspiration and make connections. But for the nitty-gritty, how does this actually happen for RISD students? Go back to the Fulbright section of the RISD Careers website. There are two very important documents to guide your process, the checklist and deadline, and getting started. First, though, consider, will you be applying through RISD? If enrolled or an alum who graduated in the past 3 years, you have the option to apply through RISD. But you're welcome to apply on your own, which Fulbright calls at large, and it is not seen as a disadvantage by Fulbright in any way. Know that the pro to applying through RISD is you'll receive intensive support throughout the process. But the con may be you must follow RISD's internal deadline. We require that you submit in mid-August in order to receive feedback, have time for fine-tuning, and resubmit. Fulbright's national deadline is early October. Our internal deadlines are in place so we can effectively, efficiently, and fairly support you all through the process, but they are also in place for your benefit. We know from past experience that applicants who start late really struggle and then decide to wait until next year, which is fine. Lots of applicants have false starts and come back stronger the next year. This is RISD's checklist and deadline, which you saw earlier. This is just the first page of this document, a visual look at the deadline. This document goes on to provide additional milestones for each application component. This document will help guide your process. Be sure to check out this document on the website for exact date, but know that the first deadline is the Kickstart meeting in mid to late May, where you confirm your intent and country choice, and we ensure you are ready to go. The second deadline is your first draft, due early June. And the first submit, if you're applying through RISD, is mid-August. Keep in mind, summer can be very challenging considering that many countries have a culture of long holidays in the summer, and holiday means a real break. You may find that affiliate contacts are not available, particularly mid-July to early September. And we strongly encourage you to submit documents before the deadlines. This will provide you with early reviews, meaning more time to redraft, incorporate feedback, fine-tune, and move on to your next draft or another application component. The second important document is the RISD Getting Started. You are going to want to jump into this document. This is the index page. The first thing you'll notice is that it's really long, but consider that this is a condensed version of everything for RISD artists and designers in one place, with guidance based on our experience working with many applicants over the years. This is your resource. Take the time to read it over once and then use it as a reference throughout the process. The RISD Getting Started document walks you through each application component with detailed advice. Plus, it has valuable information on how to work with me, what makes you a strong candidate, what makes a competitive proposal. So what are the components? Affiliation. Applicants must find and arrange their affiliation. Countries have specific requirements, but it is usually with a university, nonprofit, or research think tank. It cannot be a for-profit company. Applicants must build the relationship and then document the nature of the relationship in a letter. Yes, this can be hard and take time, so start early. Just do it. Don't wait for the perfect draft or perfect project idea. Who your affiliate is, what they can offer, what they would like in return will affect your project ideas and proposal. You want to work with your affiliate to develop your project. There are tips in the Getting Started document to help your search and develop your affiliation. We also have an email outreach template and actual affiliate letters we can review with you during advising appointments. Statement of grant purpose. This is a 2-page proposal outlining all the details and purpose of your project. Do consider that less is more. One thoughtful idea will be more effective than many. The purpose statement needs to be a clear and straightforward plan. You need a focused, unique direction to get busy reviewers on board. How do you do this? There are a number of tools to get you started on project development and writing. In the RISD Getting Started document under the application component statement of grant purpose, you can find these prompts to ensure you hit key content. This is in a sense a way to interview yourself. You can use these prompts as headers to help you focus, and then as your draft develops, you will delete and transition. In fact, I often use these as a checklist when I review your first draft. Feasibility is key. You will need a strong how plan section with details and a timeline. The how plan will be most of your second page. It is hard to imagine a project in another country that will take place in a year or more, but that is what you will have to do. Imagine and know that it is okay if that plan changes. You need a plan to help your viewers understand and visualize what you want to do and to get out the door. Personal statement. You have 1 page to talk about your path. How did you get to this point of applying for a Fulbright? This is where you can be more creative and show some personality. It could be anything really. It is an introduction to you. Obviously nothing too personal. Remember, this is a government grant, and it should be directly related to your project. Think of this as a 3rd page in connection to your purpose statement. This is a great place for critical reflection. Fulbright loves critical reflection and seeing that you have an awareness of your arc of growth. What did you try, learn, then realize? And how did that change your perspective, lead you to new questions and next steps? This is also a place for examples and stories rather than a listing like a resume. Deep reflection of one story in your path is better than a list. For both the purpose and personal statement, consider in the Getting Started document the section on what makes a competitive proposal. For each of these green bullets, you will find a detailed description of what Fulbright is looking for. Read this now at the beginning and keep referring back to it as you develop your proposal. In addition, continue asking yourself the 2 big important questions. First, why this country? Beyond the institution you will be working with, if you picked up this project for Singapore and moved it to Japan, is it the same thing? How is it unique to Singapore? Second, how will this experience improve your craft? Beyond inspiration or a new place to practice, what skills are you gaining to specifically improve your craft in this particular country? Language forms. Depending on the country, a language self-evaluation and a professional evaluation may be required or recommended. 3 recommendation letters are required. Choose wisely in terms of who will write a meaningful letter and who will be timely. At the application stage, unofficial transcripts are required, so you will need to collect these documents, scan them neatly, and upload them into the application. The online application is really long and includes 5 to 6 additional essays. Start this early. This is not a last-minute thing, and be neat and consistent in both content and in formatting. You want to have a strong application package from beginning to end. And finally, visual materials. I have this last, not because it isn't important. It is. It's extremely important. But you are the experts on this. You know how to do this well. I highly recommend you check out the Fulbright Arts Portfolio webinar found on Fulbright's recorded webinars page. And a few pointers. Follow the instructions. How many? Size, resolution, minutes. Make your case with effective high-quality images. Consider every image counts. Every image should tell a story that supports your purpose and path. You can have some detail shots, maybe an installation shot, but no throwaways. Use collaged images sparingly. There can be a couple of collaged images where it makes sense, but too many is overwhelming and diminishes the look and feel of a whole piece as a single image. There really needs to be a reason for more than one view in an image, otherwise it seems like sneaking in additional pieces to gain an advantage. Make the connection to your grant project through your images. Your gallery-ready portfolio may not be the same as your project portfolio. Focus on the fit to your project. And consider your audience carefully. Your reviewers are not only artists. Use the image description space to help make your case. Not only title, size, and material, tell us more. This is your chance to make connections. This is your chance to show your preparedness, yet room for growth. This is your chance to tell your reviewers, especially your non-art reviewers, more about your process and ways of thinking. Take advantage of this space. Curate the order thoughtfully for a cohesive portfolio feel. A curated portfolio shows organized thinking and thoughtfulness. It shows you care about this opportunity. Be sure to start strong to capture their attention and make them want to see more. Be sure to end strong, as that last image will stay on their mind as they move to other parts of your application. And in a group review, that last image may stay up on the screen as they talk about your application. You want that image to be strong and connected to what you are proposing. And a final tip, print each image you are considering on half sheets of paper. Tape them to a wall. Stand back and really look at them, and then move them around to find that compelling flow. These portfolio tips can be found in an 8-minute video on the RISD Fulbright page. The final weeks can be fairly intense, so I'm going to walk you through the submission steps. If you are applying through RISD, you submit the complete application through the Fulbright online system by mid-August, but Fulbright is not looking at it at this point. I then arrange your RISD Fulbright interview, and don't worry, the interview is more fun than scary, and it can be very helpful. Know that RISD is not a gatekeeper. We submit all applications. The interview's purpose is to ensure that you're prepared to carry out your proposed project and provide an opportunity for you to receive additional feedback. After your interview, I unsubmit your application, and you have a last chance for fine-tuning. This is the time for minor changes, not rewriting. Redevelopment after months of work doesn't usually work out well. This is the time to make careful, select changes to strengthen. Then you resubmit. I take a quick look to catch any errors. Then I hit my submit button to Fulbright, and it's done. Art applications are first reviewed in the U.S. by U.S. experts by discipline, and semifinalist decisions are announced in January. Semifinalist applications then go to the host countries for review. And then host countries make their final decisions. Both governments approve, and then finalists are announced anytime between March and June, usually by the end of April. I've given you a lot of information and resources, but how do you get started? Grant writing is just as much about organization skills as it is about project development. Develop organizational tools based on your style to keep track of your research, drafts, and affiliate outreach, and set personal milestones to help you meet the deadline. Review the country summary pages, which is really exciting, and it is important to find out early on if there are restrictions, preferences, or special requirements. Start drafting your purpose and personal statements early. The first draft, the commitment in writing, and the feedback you receive, this is when things really take off. And find help. Ask for help. This is a complicated grant. Find people who will support your application process. Meet with me, but not only me. I'm only one voice in this process. Find someone in your discipline to guide your research and content. Find someone to give you feedback on your image choices. Get a professor on board. Maybe you can send them a draft or two during the summer. Reach out to the RISD Center for Arts and Language. They are an excellent resource for brainstorming or fine-tuning your proposal. Make use of the incredible resources at the RISD Library. And talk to RISD Global about where RISD might have connections in your host country. A word of advice on getting help: get advice early in the process rather than so much at the end. At the beginning, all voices are important. At the end, your voice is important. Last-minute advice is dangerous. It can throw you off. Everyone will see something different. Well-intentioned advice can send you down a rabbit hole after months of hard work, and it's really hard to recover from that. And one more resource for you. On the RISD Fulbright page, scroll down to Tips from RISD Fulbrighter. Click on Learn More, and you'll go to a document full of excellent insights and tips from RISD Fulbrighter to Brazil, Gail Foreman. I want to leave you with a reminder of the first deadline. Schedule your Kickstart meeting to take place by mid-May. You can make an appointment with me on the RISD Careers website. At some point, depending on the applicant pool, I'm only open for appointments with those applying this year. But RISD Career Advisors Jason and Scott will continue taking appointments for those interested in a future Fulbright application. First drafts are due early June. This is a draft, and there'll be many more, but it should be a serious, thoughtful draft, not an outline, not bullets, and in the correct format and page numbers, and proof for typos and grammar errors. You don't have to have all the answers for the first draft. Start pretending and imagining. The more thoughtful your drafts are, the deeper I can go in my review to provide feedback that will help you take it to the next level. Be sure to check out the Fulbright checklist and deadlines on the RISD Fulbright website for the exact date. And finally, it will not be a waste of time. I want to emphasize what an amazing experience Fulbright is. This is an incredibly competitive grant. It is important that you embark on this journey, understanding that the process itself is a valuable experience, from the research to developing relationships overseas, to writing to submitting. A Fulbright proposal is a lot of work, maybe the most intense proposal you will ever write. After a Fulbright application, other grants might seem easy. I look forward to working with you. Thank you, everyone.
And just a few quick Fulbright updates before we hear from Irina and then Gabriel. Some really exciting news. We have 9 RISD Fulbright semifinalists right now. They are waiting to hear host country final decisions. I'm sure Gabe and Irina know that feeling really well. It's the wait. Second, the 2024 Fulbright cycle will open April 2nd. At that time, the country pages will all be updated. So do make note to set aside some time to poke around in April to get familiar with any new country requirements. Third, we do have tentative dates for the deadlines if you intend to apply through RISD. So as of today, February 27th, the first deadline is going to be May 23rd. That's the Kickstart intent to apply meeting with me. And first drafts are due June 5th. Do check the RISD Fulbright website in April to make sure there aren't any changes. So, okay, let's hear now from our amazing Fulbrighters. And so we're going to start with Irina.
Oh, good. Hi, everyone. I will be talking about my recent-ish Fulbright term, during which I went to Finland. So while I was there, I basically worked with Arctic researchers and reindeer herders on a range of design artifacts that address the lack of stakeholder representation and knowledge diversity in climate policy. So this is the way I phrased it in my official proposal, but as you'll see, many details will change along the way, and definitely by the end. I also want to acknowledge that this is perhaps a bit of an unusual art and design proposal, or at least I remember not being able to find many examples of previous RISD proposals, or honestly, like any proposals that mirrored what I felt like I wanted to do. And early on in the application process, I was often trying to figure out and asking myself how I could make this more legible as creative work and less reading less like, I was trying to do social sciences without any qualifications. But it worked out, and hopefully this gives some of you encouragement that you don't necessarily have to have a purely craft-based proposal or a project that fits into a pre-existing template that you might perceive. So for that reason, I'm going to focus my time today on more of the application process. And then at the end, I'll sum up some day-to-day living and working stuff. So to give full context, I'll start way back and say that it actually took me a while to finally apply for the Fulbright, even though I'd been thinking about it since like 2015, 16. And back then I had graduated from my undergrad degree in London, and I was so excited about the prospect of a Fulbright that I think I misinterpreted that excitement as a feeling of being ready. And I went down the path of starting an application. I even asked for reference letters, but it started to all feel like I was kind of grasping in the dark for the sake of getting to do a Fulbright rather than applying for the Fulbright for the sake of doing a particular project for a particular reason also. So luckily I was able to kind of step back and acknowledge that disconnect, and then I just put it on pause. So when I finally did decide to apply, it was after my graduate degree. And it really felt full circle in a satisfying way. So before RISD, I was working on endangered language revitalization through the lens of typographic design. And then what brought me to RISD's industrial design program was seeing so much overlap over the years. And as I did more projects between this language injustice and social and environmental and political injustice, and just really wanting to zoom back out and contextualize design within wider systems of consequence. So the Fulbright was a really wonderful and unique mechanism for me to recombine areas of interest and work with both of my old and my new tools. And of course, I'm not here to judge whether you are all ready or define what that means for anyone but myself, but I just did want to say that for myself, it did a lot of good to sort of stop and reassess over and over again, what it meant to be motivated and what my intentions were at various stages of this very long, as you can see, application process, which is way longer than the actual project itself when it finally came around. But that waiting, I think, ultimately made for a much stronger application. And this idea of patience and timing, it ties into this thread that I'll mention throughout today, which is how to make sure that you're not rushing in a way that results in extractive research. So about affiliates, I would encourage everyone to think super carefully about the communities you would want to work with and how to reach out to them, especially whenever there's an inherent power imbalance in that dynamic, as it was in my case. And so, ask yourself what they would be getting out of your presence and participation instead of thinking, about our arrival or our project as an obvious gift because it's the most interesting thing for us. And you only need one affiliate, but I designed my project to have two because I wanted to have a home base affiliate, as it were, in a more classically design-based context, plus a fieldwork affiliate in the Arctic. And so one affiliate was the head of Notice Sustainable Design Research Group at Aalto University's Department of Design. This meant I was based in Helsinki for half of the Fulbright. It was a good fit for me because they shared a lot of the same design theory frameworks, and that also helped my application feel more like an art and design project. I had also always wondered what it might be like to fully go down the academic route and get a PhD in design, which is not so common in the States. And in this research group, there were a lot of, it was mostly PhD students and postdocs that eventually, were able to be my friends and share their experiences. Spoiler alert, I'm probably not going to do a PhD now. But anyway, it was a good fit for them because nobody in their group has explicit work or ongoing projects at the intersection of co-design and ethics and Indigenous issues, but everyone was interested and considered that an important part of the overall conversation. And they already had a system for accepting visiting researchers, so it gave their research group exposure and legitimacy whenever I could appear on authored papers as a notice researcher. So the other affiliate was the leader of the EU-funded charter project, which is based at University of Lapland's Arctic Center and Arctica Museum. This meant that I was in Rovaniemi for the other half of the Fulbright term, and that's just on the edge of the Arctic Circle. You can see that dotted line running across. It was a good fit for me because even though I was most interested in working directly with Indigenous Sami reindeer herders, they're not like checking institutional emails or incentivized at all to invite researchers the way that professors and academics are. And in fact, they, understandably tend to be very guarded against researchers who get in touch out of the blue, right? Having been burnt by many parachute researchers in the pretty recent past. So working closely with career-long Arctic researchers and scientists was one way for me to work with herders that had already built that hard-earned trust over time with the so-called gatekeeper to vet people like me. It was a good fit for them because they were really interested in more collaboration between the arts and sciences. And this was a little bit tricky at first because I wasn't necessarily motivated to like make art in a traditional sense by interpreting science, but it turned out to be a really worthwhile sort of compromise in terms of being able to offer the researchers something that they already definitively valued rather than me showing up and, acting like, I wasn't there to help them do something as straightforward as illustrating diagrams for their scientific manuscripts, for example, which was actually like so much fun. So bringing this back to the previous point about patience and timing, I would have never swung this affiliation if I had tried to rush this application years ago. When the project leader got my cold email, he immediately called me from the Arctic. It was midnight there and it was like the sun was up because it was summer. And he had just checked his email for the last time before going on summer holiday. And he only called because he was so surprised when he clicked through to my website and saw photos of some of the work I was doing in the Aleutian Islands of Alaska with endangered language work. And these islands are, considered part of the Arctic purview. And because they're notoriously hard to get to, he was just like, how did you get to the Aleutian Islands? And I think it just built some credibility, right, in his mind. For a random stranger to reach out, he sort of immediately could understand that I had some relevant experience. And yeah, they get a lot of people reaching out and hoping to work on this or that. So it's helpful if you have some demonstrated experience and expertise. Some other tips about affiliates. This little sketch just like was how I was thinking of the way my proposal ideas sort of changed and also became less opaque or vague as I continued different conversations with various affiliates. So it's like each email you send is almost like a mini version of your eventual proposal draft. Not just the formal drafts that you're going to develop with Lisa and RISD. So keep track of all your cold emails. Don't be afraid of them. That's the only way you get in touch with people. Org maps honestly helped me a lot, keeping track of who I was talking to, who I already emailed, how they might already know each other. And once you start to map out that landscape, you can start to like spot gaps or like hotspots more easily. This was already said in the video too, but be super conscious of other countries' vacation times. I got pretty lucky and I caught like most of the folks I was talking to a couple weeks before they would then go silent for months. And then another thing I wanted to know is sometimes I got sent in circles because of the interdisciplinary nature of my stated project interests. The art departments, like if I emailed someone in an art department, they would often be like, I think you should get in touch with the science department. And then the science people would say that I needed to go talk to the art people. My personal opinion on this is that it's probably best to find people who already understand the value of interdisciplinary work from the beginning, rather than trying to convince them of its value, because eventually that's something that's going to really influence the working relationship and expectations like throughout the entire collaboration. A useful thing also to know is that every country's Fulbright like partner on the countryside is really different. And Fulbright Finland, for example, was extremely well built out. It had a really strong reputation within Finland. It played a really active role in cultural diplomacy and research funding. So they were just like, they were an entire force. And that for me, it was good. I think, my cohort of Fulbrighters had the benefit of organized events and formal support if we needed it and institutional scaffolding. on the ground. On the other hand, it also meant we had a lot of, not a ton, but we had formal obligations, responsibilities, things that we, had to stay accountable for and check in on and all of that stuff. And their staff were lovely, and they were really concerned with our well-being, and they kept checking in to see, how we were dealing with the culture shock, which always made me laugh because I was like, I have no notes. This is generally so much smoother and more pleasant than navigating my life in North America. So genuinely, the easiest thing about this whole process for me was just like actually living in Finland. The bureaucracy around getting there was a bit of a struggle because I had to renew my passport and time to rush an international move to Canada before then applying for my Finnish visa, like within a few months, which was all very convoluted and stressful. But once I got there, it was really breezy and lovely. You can see from the photos that I enjoyed myself, even in the long, very dark days of the Arctic winter. I found that being just like active and being outside, having the right clothing, very important. But that was just a good way to cope with that. And then I haven't left much time to talk about the work itself, partly because it's splintered off into so many different threads, all great threads, but hard to consolidate into one narrative in a short amount of time. You've likely heard this advice maybe already, but absolutely be prepared for the possibility of all your plans to change when you actually get there and start working with people on a day-to-day basis. Also, Fulbright knows this, and so that's not, like, I wouldn't worry about that. Because during the application process, you're really focusing on building feasibility, which requires you to be, super specific and very confident about timelines and deliverables. But I really found that when everything actually started, the most useful attitude and the most healthy attitude that I could have was being flexible, which means that the confidence that you have in the proposal process should really translate to agility on the ground rather than a perfectionistic expectation for things to sort of play out exactly as you had planned a year ago from across the world, because of course, how could they? Again, this ties back to the whole non-extractive research thing. And I really found it was so much more worthwhile and just felt more ethically sound for me to adjust my plans in a way that meant I would end up with long-term collaborators and friends rather than short-term deliverables. And, in terms of my particular project proposal, I never really could have proposed an ethical plan to co-design, right, towards a specific outcome, when the whole point of co-design is that the outcome and a lot of the process is inherently unknowable without first knowing and sharing that agency with some of your collaborators. I will end on the happy note that a year and a half after the term officially ended, I'm still in very regular contact with many of the folks that I work with. I was invited back in October of last year and attended this amazing reindeer roundup in the north, traveled to Tromsø with the project team. I was going to play one of the videos, but I think it's going to be fussy, so I'll just wrap up now. That deck of cards that I made is still being used in workshops as a tool for more inclusive Arctic research. It like provides a more tangible way for herders to discuss complex and usually abstract issues that they contend with in the reindeer husbandry operational environment, and using that to communicate their sort of hopes and their concerns with policymakers. The story map that we made about Tufja, who's a Yamal herder, and his family, is going to be installed in the Arctica Museum. It went on to be a finalist in the ArcGIS competition, and I just presented it in December at the AGU conference. I have a few manuscripts in the publishing pipeline, which is another funny thing I hadn't planned for, but because peer-reviewed publishing is like the currency in academia, it became a really valuable type of output for the people I was working with. So I ended up doing more of that than I planned, which is fine. And on the ethics of co-design, I presented at a symposium and delivered some talks at different universities. I'm heading to Davos this summer to represent Charter in the World Biodiversity Forum. I will be presenting on transdisciplinary work making some fun speculative artifacts about sensory perception of Arctic species, which should be fun. And then I'm currently pitching like long form pieces about reindeer feeding, and we'll be designing and editing a book about Charter's work. So yeah, that's that's it. That's my time.
Awesome. Hi, my name's Gabriel. I graduated from RISD in 2017. I was in the open media department. And I did a Fulbright in Poland in 2022 and into 2023. I have images of what I did and where I was and all of that, and I'm hoping to get to it. But I did kind of like Arena want to talk a lot about, or talk more about, the application process. And like, I can really only talk about what I did, how I kind of got to wanting to apply for the Fulbright, and then what the process was. So I'm gonna focus on that, and then hopefully if there's time, talk about some other stuff. So after RISD, I was living in New York. I was working in theater, doing projection design mostly, and was sort of continuing making my own work, but it had kind of fallen kind of by the wayside, just because it took so much time and energy just to like live in New York and make enough money, things like that. But when the pandemic happened, I was, in lockdown in New York. And so I kind of started to think more about my work, and that was really all I had to focus on. So I started doing some projects. I'm just gonna scroll. Started doing some projects, or I was sort of able to get some grants and some residencies to complete some projects that were kind of focused on my father's family. They were Jews in Poland. They're from a town called Węgrow, which we'll talk more about later. And they had survived the Holocaust by hiding in and around the town in various places for the entirety of the Second World War. And both of my father's parents had died before I was born. And he had this sort of complicated relationship with his parents, with his identity, and he had made artwork about it. And I had gotten really interested in thinking about the sort of, I guess, thinking about my grandparents and their history as a sort of like a subconscious, like a fiction, something that I kind of created by accident, really focusing on what had sort of been built without my sort of intention, and sort of trying to like work through and represent those fictions, rather than trying to sort of have a sort of documentary approach to sort of understanding, I don't know, to thinking I could understand aspects of their life that were sort of out of my reach. And so after doing that work for kind of a few years and doing the residencies and things like that, I started to do some research and get more interested in the town that they were from and that they were hiding in, which again is Węgrow. It's about an hour east of Warsaw, so it's near the Belarusian border of Poland. And my great uncle, so my grandfather's brother, had written a memoir called The Last Jew from Węgrow, which had sort of floated around my house for a while. And I had read when I was younger, and then I reread, which is really sort of like it's really focused on hiding, on constructing hiding places, and on sort of limiting the flow of information and things like that. So really the nitty-gritty of how they survived the war. And I started doing some research into Węgrow, the town, and made contact with some local historians who I sort of read online were interested in my family or in the Jews of Van Grove. And what I discovered was that there was this whole body of research that was sort of built on top of my great uncle's book, using it as like a primary source, but that had what sort of began as a sort of investigation of the history had sort of become different. Starting in 2016, the Law and Justice Party in Poland sort of became the majority party, or the party in power, and this was and is like a nationalist, maybe ultra nationalist, far right political group. They were in power from 2016 through when I was in my grant up until this past November, when they lost the opposition party. But part of their sort of cultural policy had to do with funding memorials and historians to kind of, or the production of memorials and historical research that would amplify the history of Polish suffering during the Second World War and Polish heroism, and that would kind of dampen anything that suggested that there might have been Polish collaboration with the German army, or any sort of like non-heroic portrayal of Poles. And so what I discovered is that there was a group of local historians who had begun doing research on my great uncle's book, and as you can see in this picture here, had actually uncovered one of the hiding places, one of the places that they had hid for 50 days, which was a sort of behind a false wall in the attic above a store that they operated before the war. So the government, the Law and Justice Party, was funding this research in the hopes that they would disprove some testimony that my great uncle had given about what happened in Van Grove and potential collaboration and things like that. And the reason, the reason I'm going into so much detail is because I hadn't really thought about the Fulbright as a possibility. I really only came to the idea of a Fulbright because I was talking to Lisa and saying, like, I want to do work about this thing, and I think I need to be there to do it. So I didn't really begin with, I want a Fulbright, and then how can I make that happen? It was sort of like, I want to do this project. How can I make it into a Fulbright? And that's sort of what I want to talk about. The question, there were like several challenges like with this idea. Obviously it's about solidifying it, about finding people who want to work with you. But there was also this question of like, the government who is going to be selecting you, or who is, is sort of partially making this decision, in this case, is also kind of implicated in your project. Or is implicated in what is going on, what you want to make the project sort of about. And so I wanted to, I guess, talk through like how I tried to navigate that, and also sort of like how I sort of navigated turning this into like a project that made sense to like as an application. So the first thing was really like trying to figure out how do you sort of talk about this in a visual way. I was applying as an installation artist, and so like, how do I make a sort of visual connection to these questions about I guess, history, testimony, memory, fiction, or like the fictionalization of certain aspects of a history and a national history. And so the way that I sort of chose to approach that was by looking at these carvings that my great uncle had done while in hiding. They're mostly meant to be images of himself or family members. This bottom one is of a barn that they were hiding in. And then the top left is a tree, and it's sort of an epitaph to his girlfriend at the time, Rachel, who was killed when her hiding place was discovered. And so I sort of wanted to use this as like a visual base, like a visual sort of structure, or a sort of visual reference point, I guess, to talk about a sort of I guess a sort of like specific, in this case, like Jewish, but also like familial like approach to memorialization and also to like representation of the body and of Jews specifically. And the way that I did that was sort of by creating a relationship between these and these, which are called lucky Jews. It's just kind of a not very good diagram I made. Lucky Jews are a Polish folk craft that had existed for many years before the Second World War, but really sort of started to boom as an industry after the Second World War, where they were being sold in Easter markets, and were being sold to collectors and tourists. There's sort of these wood carvings of these sort of caricatured Jews, and they're meant to bring good luck. They really spoke to sort of like the complicated relationship between Poles and Jews in Poland before the Second World War, in the sense that Poles had sort of ascribed a mystical quality to Jews. Jews were kind of considered like to have magical powers sometimes, and the contact, even though there were many Jews in Poland and they lived very near to Poles or in community with Poles, there often was not a lot of cross kind of cultural interaction. And so I was sort of interested in the relationship between these wood carvings that are ostensibly of Jews by a Jewish person, that sort of omit the body, right, and are hiding the body, and these Jewish figures that are produced by Poles, by non-Jews, and for the most part are produced after the Second World War, when 90% of the Jewish population of the country has been killed, and the remaining sort of 90% have left. And so that was sort of how I kind of created this relationship between a sort of personal kind of moment, I guess, or craft, a way of thinking about the material, and the historical and the country. But then it kind of became about like, how do you make it real? How do you sort of like make this about an interaction? Because I mean, I think that it was sort of inherent in the project that there would be interaction. I was proposing to go to the town, to live in the town, to sort of make work that was sort of thinking about memorial, thinking about space and the body, or place and the body. But it was sort of, how do you actually make that happen? So the first thing I did was make contact with one of the historians, funny enough, who were like being funded to do research on the family in order to discredit certain things. And I was able to make contact with someone named Michal, who was a geographer and had excavated the hiding place. And so with him, it really became a question of sort of like, how can I come in? How can I sort of do something that makes sense and that is useful to them and to the community, who are sort of like still living in the space where these events happened. Whereas to me, this space has been sort of like, at least in my work, has been sort of fictionalized for so long. How can we sort of talk about how those things relate, how they relate? And so I worked with him and then spent a lot of time sort of reaching out to, honestly, doing a lot of cold emailing like Arena did, and was sort of able to get in touch with, well, maybe it's better to say that one of the things that became really clear from talking to him and also from talking to Chris Bart and Kina Leski, who are architecture professors at RISD, was that I really didn't have a good understanding of Polish history and of the Polish perspective on the Second World War. And so the goals kind of became, how do I sort of bridge the gap between the people of Vengrove and myself and my family? And so my affiliate was Michal, who was able to help me sort of interact with and live with people in Vengrove, and allowed me to sort of do my project. And my other affiliate was Jolanta Ambrosowicz-Jacobs, who's a professor in Krakow of Polish and Jewish history. And the point of sort of working with her was to sort of spend time at the university before I lived in Vengrove, where I lived for 6 months, to try to sort of formally and academically study Polish history and the history of the Jews in Poland. I'm sorry, I feel like I've gone kind of long. Can you tell me if I have more time or if I should stop?
Sorry. You can just nicely wrap it up, how about?
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I guess I didn't get to say as much as I wanted to say, but it's kind of a complicated story, unfortunately. Or I don't know, fortunately, unfortunately. I wanted to talk specifically about this because I think that I can't really speak to your experience specifically. I can really only speak about like, how did I come to make it make sense? How did I come to like take an idea that I had kind of separate from the Fulbright, and try to make it fit within the framework of the Fulbright, try to make it, or try to really tease out the parts of the project or the parts of the idea that were already there, that sort of touched on cross-cultural interaction, on a sort of impact on a community, on sort of growing your own practice. And I hope I did that somewhat. Yeah, thank you.
That was really fantastic. And I think anyone that's listening, one of the things really that both had such really interesting, unique, both personal, both artistic, professional experiences. And that's what Fulbright is. I mean, there's no one way of doing this. Before you start, during, things happen, things change. And I think that your two interesting project ideas and then how they shifted and what actually happened are just really good examples of where things can go with this. Fulbright is quite a journey. And I also think, what happens on your experience is also a lot different than what you write about, because you didn't know all this amazing stuff was going to happen. Obviously, and for anyone listening, they didn't write about all of this stuff. You only have 2 pages. So you're not writing about all these amazing, great things that happen. You are writing down a very specific plan and then leaving lots of room for this incredible stuff to happen once you're there. So yeah, thank you both so much. And I've really enjoyed working with you from before you started, when you started, and then throughout your experience. It's been really fantastic. So Kevin, any questions? For some reason, my question and answer, I can't even see the box.
Yes, so we've got one question, which I'm gonna read aloud. And Lisa, you are probably the person for this question. And then obviously for those attending, this is a great opportunity for you to put questions in the Q&A, which we will bring forth to Lisa and to Gabe and to Irina. So let me read the question. And the question is, are we able to apply with a collaborator, 2 artists submitting the same application, or apply separately in pursuit of the same project?
So no, you can't apply as a team. It's only individuals. And then obviously the risk of applying two of you for the same project is that only one of you would get it. They are always looking for diversity across disciplines, across all kinds of things. And so you would actually be competing against each other from the beginning for the US review and then in the host country review. So yeah, Fulbright just has a very strict rule that it's no teams.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Again, for those attending, please bring up any questions. Another question for both of you, Gabe and Irina, is a question about what would be one of the most primary tips you would give to any applicant to get them through this process, which is, as we've seen, involves a lot of work, involves a lot of focus. So what would be your top tip or two that you would give?
Do you want to go first, or I can go? I'll go. I mean, I think this is sort of like, it's maybe a tip for life too, but it's really that, like, the more people you get involved, the better it is going to go for you. I mean, it sort of, for me, started with the writing. I really am not confident with my writing. I think I struggle with it a lot. And so even when I was sort of writing the essays or thinking about writing the essays or thinking about emailing people, I was asking many people, including Lisa, but also like my mom and my girlfriend and like my friends who are artists whose work I like to read things. And then when I sort of started to formulate the project, it became about finding, well, who knows more about this thing than I do? And then when I was there and I was trying to put on an exhibition, or I was trying to figure out how to source certain materials or whatever, it was also just, again, about information gathering and about, the more people you get involved, the more kind of potential there is for things to go in unexpected directions too. So, yeah.
Fabulous advice, Gabe, as you said, not only for the Fulbright, but in life for sure. Irina, it seems like you had that same advice in a way, or followed that path, because you made such incredible connections. But do you have other insights and tips?
Yeah, I think maybe it's like a parallel tip, but I think for my project, because I didn't start with such a like beautiful, clear sort of prompt in the way that Gabe had in his mind before starting the Fulbright application. For me, it was being really open to crafting a project and a proposal that was a sum of parts that is more than just me. So like, as I was reaching out to affiliates, it wasn't just like looking for people that would let me do my project. It was like, who can I find that is doing something so important and interesting and still has some sort of maybe a gap that I can help fill. And so I really liked thinking of it as like a putting together a bunch of pieces instead of like trying to beg people to let me do this thing on my own. And that made it a lot more fun. It can be overwhelming because it's a lot of moving parts, but I think it's way more worthwhile that way.
Awesome. And there's no doubt, I think, with many things, breaking them into pieces or parts makes them so much more accomplishable too. So,
yeah, and I would just add too, like everyone's approach to this is different. There's unlimited ways of doing this, and some people come to this with more of a personal story. Some is more the artistic, want to do because this country does this, or these people do this. Other people, like, I just want to go to Finland. I just want to be in Finland. And then, from there, things start developing. So there's no one way into this. It's millions of ways into this. So just keep that in mind.
So we do have several questions have come in, and two of them are very specific to Lisa. So let me do both of them, because I think they'll involve quicker answers. And then the other two have a little bit more need for feedback from Gabe and from Irina. So Lisa, the 3-year grace period after graduation, is that at the moment of submission or after you start the program?
So it is the application year, 3 years. So if it's 2024, that's the application year. This is the 2024 application. We do 3 years. So that'd be 2021. 2021, if you graduate 21 plus 3 years is 2024. So that makes sense. Application year.
Great. Thank you for that. And also, Lisa, I know diversity is important for the host country. If I have dual citizenship with the country I'm interested in, would I be disqualified to apply to that country?
So it depends on the country. You have to look at the country pages. Some countries do have restrictions on this. Some are open. And then there's a total range from there. So look on the country page. It's usually very, very clear. It will not only say if you can be a dual citizen, but it'll also say if you can have any time in the country before the grant begins. So just double check for the country you're interested in.
Great. Okay, the next question is, can you both, and referring to Gabe and to Irina, can you both talk a little bit more about your host affiliate search experience? I have been struggling to find the right people in my country of choice.
I can go first. I think the whole thing happened for me over the course of this early summer, like late spring, early summer. I'm trying to remember like over how many months, but I did sort of a batch of research, started that map of orgs and how they're related to each other. I looked beyond universities, like looked at nonprofits or even like artist groups or government entities. A lot of the people then I found within those organizations, I would email, like just cold email multiple people from each organization or group, because of obviously like not everyone is going to be the type of person to respond to email right away, etc. I found that I either didn't get a response, which is common and normal and shouldn't discourage you, or I got a response that was like very quick, like, we don't have capacity, thanks for asking, which is fine, great, check, move on. Sometimes I got these like, this is interesting, can you tell me more? And those are the ones where you can start to, I guess, like try to see like what parts of your first email were most interesting, and then like probe a bit more in that direction, ask them questions. Or I actually offered a couple times to be like, do you want to just like set up a Zoom call and we can just chat about it? But actually nobody really took me up on that. I think there are a lot of busy people who are just like, unless something's really, really pertinent, it's hard to just like keep going back and forth with a stranger for too long. So it's interesting. I think it depends. I found that it kind of came down to a lot of luck with timing and with personalities. For example, the affiliate that ended up calling me on the phone, like nobody else did that. He also didn't write me an email. It's like, is it a good time to call? He just like called and we just chatted, and he, was very, very consistent in responding to emails and checking drafts, and got really excited, introduced me to all these different people. And when I met him, it made total sense. That's just the type of person he is. And I got really, that was one of the latest batches of emails that I sent. So even after I secured my first affiliate with the design department, I was still looking for like a fieldwork partner. And so honestly, it feels like luck and persistence. And also be ready, I would say, to do more of the work in front. So like, for example, my first affiliate was like, sure, happy to sign you up as a visiting researcher. Can you write my affiliation letter for me? And I can just check it. And I did that in the next day and forwarded it. And she was like, great, perfect, check. So I think being ready to make it as easy as possible for the person to respond to you and agree to stuff and understand what you're trying to do is always a good thing.
Excellent, Irina. And Gabe, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I just to touch on something that Irina said about like the people having the bandwidth to go back and forth. I think that is something that you really need to be like sensitive about, because even if someone is interested, you need to make sure you're not like wasting their time. A lot of these people, especially in academia, people who are doing their own design work, people who are doing their own like organizing or research, like they don't have time to sort of like mess around. And so, but then on the other hand, you also have to balance the, not putting too much information in to say like your first email or something. Also, right? You don't want to like send someone your like your draft proposal, before they've even spoken to you or something like that. My experience, I think, was a little more, I mean, it was easier, I think, because I already had an affiliate in Vengrove, and then my other affiliate, Yolanta, I found actually by cold emailing. So Fulbright Poland, I think, has an unspoken sort of limit on the number of artists that they take per year. I think it's like 1 to 2. And so I emailed the artist from the year before me, who was still there, just to sort of introduce myself and, see how her experience was. And I told her a bit about my project, and she put me in touch with someone she'd met at the university, who ended up being my affiliate at the university as well, Yolanta. Just trying to think quickly if there's anything else I have to say about that. I would also say that like if something doesn't work out, or if someone seems interested but then falls off, or seems interested and then you can't make it happen in time or something, kind of take note of that person's interest, because I had reached out to an arts organization in Krakow when I was looking for an affiliate, and they were sort of right in the middle of doing this like festival that they do every year that is their main thing. And so we kind of like lost touch, and I mentioned them briefly actually in my application, because I was interested in working with them, but I didn't like lie and say they were affiliates or something. But once I was in Krakow, I followed up with them, and I was able to meet them in person. And I did like a very quick show with my partner in the winter there, and then ended up having my work shown as the work that I made in the Fulbright, shown as part of their festival. So even though we didn't have even though we didn't have like a Fulbright official relationship, it was a very fruitful, and it was just extremely helpful to have stayed in touch with them, not just from what I like got from them, in terms of having shows, but also just like knowing people there, getting in touch with them, and seeing what the scene was like, things like that.
Kind of goes back around to like keeping people involved and kind of building like this network and getting different voices into this.
Yep. So we're gonna end with 3 final questions. And I want to pose another one to Lisa, because it's another, I think, a quick answer from Lisa. Are you able to split your Fulbright between 2 different countries?
The quick answer is no. There is a couple of options. I think it's Greece, Turkey, and there might be one other country that allows it, I think, and it's with Greece. And then it is the EU. However, if you do the EU, there's still limits on that, and it has to have something to do with the EU, not 3 different countries that I want to go to, but actually EU policy in some way. But yeah, look at Greece, and that'll lead you to the 2 other options that are there. So, but the short answer is no, unless it's one of those specific countries. And they'll say on the country page, it's very clear on the country page.
And then this is a question. I recently reached out to a potential affiliate who mentioned allowing for a budget for expenses that go towards mentorship costs, such as proofreading, translations, travel costs, and equipment. Is a budget for mentorship normal, standard, or one of the ways?
No, it is not. We will need to talk about that. That is very, I mean, there are, there might be a place that isn't quite understanding what Fulbright is. Sometimes they might be thinking this is a Fulbright Scholar program versus the student program. They might not be understanding what the stipend is. So even though the answer is no, there's little nuance and there's a little, we need a little more information and kind of figure out what they might be talking about, what they think you might be needing, and those kinds of things. So we do want to kind of, I think I saw the name was Ashley. And so we'll talk about that. But no, if you're reaching out to someone and they're saying that you need to pay them or you need some kind of a budget, definitely talk to me, talk to somebody at Fulbright, and we'll have to figure out what's happening there.
Thank you, Lisa. And this question is one of the biggies, and it's a really important one that is asked often. How much does your application have to be about community benefits versus your own personal interest? And I think every Fulbrighter goes through that. Lisa, do you have thoughts to add to the question before we get some insight from Gabe and from Irina?
Yeah, when you answer this question, we want to hear from each of you on this. Think about, like, when you talked about your projects, we heard about all this great stuff you did. Obviously, we could see you in country, we could see you bringing things to the table, we could see the exchange in lots of things that you did. But it's really hard, as you might remember in the application, when you haven't been there, when you don't know, and you're sitting there thinking, I mean, it's one of the questions people ask all the time, this is an exchange program, I'm supposed to be giving something back. I don't know what to give back. I don't know, who am I? But you have to kind of write about that in your 2-page purpose statement about, why you, what's the benefit? Why would they want you to be part of their team or whatever it is? And so it seems like we can all imagine that we're going to be really involved when we're there, but how do you write about that? And how do you make sure they understand that this isn't just about you? What did you put in your application before you knew all the wonderful stuff that you actually did when you were there?
I can go. I think that I mean, even though you have not been there yet and you don't know for sure, you can, I mean, as you're developing this project, and this is something I think, that Irina talked about a little bit too in their presentation. When you're working with your affiliate, as you're developing your proposal, your grant, what should happen is that what they want and need from you, or what would be useful to them from you, should kind of like come out organically through that conversation. And that can give you a lot of direction. I think if you are not clear, right, you don't want to make assumptions about what you can give or what you ought to give or what you ought to do. I mean, when I had emailed with Michal, the historian in Vengrove, for quite a while before we were talking seriously about Fulbright, and we had a Zoom meeting. And what he talked really pretty passionately about was that they had artists come to the town in the past who had come to do art about the Holocaust, or had come to do art about the sort of mishandling of the history of the Holocaust in the town, who had sort of gestured towards involving the town, gestured towards having a relationship with the people in the town, gestured towards sort of like understanding kind of the perspectives of the people in the town, and had sort of just kind of come and done the project over the course of a few days and left. And so what that said to me was that, and what I put in my proposal, which, was probably the most difficult part of doing the actual Fulbright, but was also probably the most rewarding part, was that the whole Fulbright was really built around preparing to be embedded and then being embedded in the community for the period of time that I was there, because that was what seemed most important to him as a historian, as a member of the community, as a person who had children who were going to school in the community and learning about the history of the town. So I mean, I would say that, you know, your project really ought to be as much about the engagement with the community as it is about your, I mean, the hope is that they intersect, but I think the best way to figure out what that intersection is by talking to the people that you're going to be working with. Yeah.
Awesome, Gabe. And Irina?
Yeah, I totally echo what Gabe said. It's funny when I first read the question in the Q&A box, I was like, wait, those are different things. I feel like if you're careful and caring in the process of writing the application and developing that relationship or like pre-relationship with your affiliates, the community interest should be your interest by the end. Like, I don't know, maybe it's because of the nature of my project. That was extra true, but yeah, I think in general, it was hard to be there and think of my project as its own separate thing in the end. And that tension is pretty clear as well. Like there are even a couple things that, you know, I knew that it was hard to get in touch with the Sami herders while I was still in the States. And so that part of the pre-planning was really difficult. And I thought that when I got to the North, it would be much easier and more fluent because I'd be interacting with people who knew people, et cetera. But even then, there was this amount of tension where it was like, do I really want to just like ask this person? Like I just met this person, I'm friendly with them enough to now have them introduce me to this other person. And just based on their status as an Indigenous person, I want to have coffee with them and ask them for their time. You know, it just felt very transactional. And so even some of those things on the day, like I just decided like, nah, like I'm just gonna go for coffee with them, not ask them for anything, just like chat. And I think it definitely changed the timeline and the nature of my project, but for the better. And another thing I'll say is like, something I hadn't really thought of as community interest necessarily, but that Finland in particular, Fulbright Finland, really loved was this idea of cultural diplomacy and I think Fulbright in general is like, that's their thing. I hadn't really thought too much about that as a separate piece of the application, but honestly, like having been embedded within Fulbright Finland, I think that's their most important metric for one of their most like important metrics when they're deciding which applications to approve. Like, is this person gonna be a good cultural ambassador? Like, are they friendly? Are they humble? Are they interested in Finland? Are they interested in sharing American things with Finnish people who want to hear about it? And all of that, like pretty simple day-to-day interaction stuff, I think also like counts, right? Like it might not be like, I'm gonna do XYZ for XYZ community, but I think if you show up being a curious, interested person, like and a humble person, like I think that goes a long way as well.
Great. I know that one more question came in, but it's been an amazing night, a lot of information, and just the time commitment for Gabe and for Irina and everyone who's attended, because we know for students there's a need to maybe get back to studio and all. So we're going to end on that question because it's a really great question that comes up a lot, and really appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa now as we bring everything to a close.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And do feel if you have more questions, if you wake up tomorrow and you have additional questions, obviously email us, meet with us. And, you know, back to the original point, like reach out to different people, talk to lots of people, especially at the beginning, talk to lots of people and things will just start building and building. And yeah, that's what Fulbright is about. I mean, this is about the people. I don't know, Irina, Gabriel, if you remember, there's a point in like August, I send an email like, it's about the people. People, don't forget about the people, because we get so wrapped up in writing about the work and the project and all the components and everything. Like this is about the people. I mean, if it could be just go over there and meet people and hang out, that's what it would be about. But of course, you need to have some meaningful activities to make that actually happen. But that's what Fulbright is. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Irina and Gabriel and Kevin, for being here.